Buongiorno, mi chiamo Clara
Good
Mavelli.
morning. My name is Clara Maveglia. In 2010, I founded in Berlin the Cultural Entrepreneurship Institute. Today, Paola Del Vescovo is my guest. She's a professor of restoration at the Fine Arts Academy in Naples, and she's also a painter. Welcome, Paola Del Vescovo. Good morning, Paola. Good morning. It's so nice to be here in Berlin. Uh, First of all, I'd ask you to introduce yourself. Good morning, everybody. My name is Paola Del Vescovo. I teach restoration at the Fine Arts Academy in Naples, and I've been teaching there for the last 15 years. And we also have a very successful school of restoration that trains true professionals. I deal I work in the field of restoration. I've been working in the field of restoration for the last 30 years, and in parallel with that, I'm also a painter. So, in the last few years, I've also been teaching at the Universität der Kunste, the governmental university, the public university, and I teach painting techniques. Of course, my career has been long and eventful, but as a resume, in a summary, I can say this. I mean, speaking about oneself is not very easy. Yes, certainly. I mean, how did you become interested in this sector? Well, this field has always been so interesting for me because since I was a little child, I had an innate aptitude to drawing. I spent hours and hours drawing and using colors. Then, when I became an adolescent, I had a friend, a girlfriend, who informed me about the fact that there is very good school of restoration in Rome. So I gathered some information about the institute, which enjoyed really an indisputable reputation in those years. So I decided to try and attend it. It was very difficult to enter it. There was the numerous clauses. I had to pass a competitive examination. I was able to pass it, and then I took on this. I started to work in this direction. But the fact that you were born in Italy, I mean, was it important, this fact that you were born in Italy, in terms of your interest in the past, in the cultural heritage? Well, certainly a lot, because Italy holds an incredible cultural heritage. Of course, this is a big responsibility for Italy because it's a world heritage. It belongs to the whole world. Certainly, yes, it had a big impact because restoration looks like the right choice to make in Italy because conservation is one of the main issues at stake today in Italy. In fact, in this sector, in this field, especially in the past, we were able to become leaders, both in terms of experience, of skills, especially in terms of experience, but also in terms of theoretical studies on restoration. Certainly, this is a discipline which is of the utmost importance and is very meaningful in Italy. Now, talking about restoration, you hinted at the fact that there are many theoretical approaches that can be taken in this field. Can you outline the main direction or describe the gray areas, the mm, nuances of these different theories? It's very important to talk about this theory. I mean, this is the only theory available, which is the theory worked out by Cesare Brandi, who's been also the director of the Central Institute in Rome. And in 1973, he wrote a treaty on this theory on restoration, and it was exported to the rest of the world. This is a theory which is based upon philosophical tenets. So whenever we carry out a restoration, which is an exquisitely practical work, nevertheless we must always comply with certain principles that have been dictated by this theory, which is still followed and implemented in Italy. Of course, Cesare Brandis' theory was worked out and written more than 50 years ago, so as to the contemporary paintings and contemporary art, well, it should be a bit updated. There are some elements that should be added or changed, but the foundations remain very strong and still apply today. I mean, Brandi argues that restoration must meet two needs. On one hand, the aesthetic need, and on the other hand, the historical need. But these two aspects are always there in a work of art, are always contained by a work of art. What do I mean by this? Each and every work of art is a work of art, is an art piece because it carries an image. Then, behind any artifact, any art piece, there's a long history because each artifact is also an evidence, gives evidence of the past. It carries a number of information about the social relations, the view of the artist, the worldview of the artist. It's an important piece of evidence of our past. So we must absolutely respect and take on board this need to preserve history, because a badly done restoration can damage, can cancel the past, even because this kind of interventions might also be irreversible. Just think of the cleaning of a painting. If you do it badly, in a wrong way, which takes away parts of the original varnish or original painting layers, well, that cannot be repaired. It's irreversible. So one must understand what is original in the piece. We must also understand the patina, which is the build-up of time. We must also understand that there was a natural aging of the painting layers that must be kept, must be preserved. So the artwork must preserve also its wrinkles. So restoration is not the restoring paintings to their original state at all costs. This would be very risky, very dangerous, must be absolutely avoided. In this sense, I must say that each restorer must abide by a very strict ethical code. And I believe that the respect for this theory is a very important guideline. We must always stick to it. And also, we must try to take as little action as possible. I mean, our intervention must not be very intrusive, because you will always change, you will always interfere with the work of art. Just taking in your hands the picture, the canvas, that's already a change, because of course you can alter the balance of temperature and humidity, and also transportation is risky. So you must do as less as you can. And a good restorer is the one who is able to say no. It's better to wait. It's more appropriate that we wait more for a longer time, because prevention is important. I mean, we must create circumstances that are suitable for conservation. of course, the cultural educational factor is very important in a country, because if there's no awareness of the importance of the value of the cultural asset, I mean, you may uh, preserve in the wrong way, thus giving rise to the need for restoration, which must be really the last resort. But actually, in reality, this does not happen very frequently, because today, of course, I mean, things are changing, and there is an excessive marketing approach to the cultural heritage. This sensationalism trend is becoming a risk. Sometimes we take action even when it is not necessary. We just do things just because that's a masterpiece, and it's a marketing operation at that point, just a marketing operation. And therefore, these kind of interventions are debatable. On the other hand, the fact that entrepreneurs, sponsors have focused their attention on the cultural heritage, and this is absolutely positive. This is something we, of course, we appreciate, but it must be managed correctly. We must bear in mind that restoration must always be planned after a long process of understanding and reflection. Also, restoration is a chance you have to touch the art piece so you can understand it better. You can understand aspects of it that otherwise wouldn't be grasped, uh, wouldn't be identified. And this is also one other element of our ethical code. I mean, before working on the art piece, you always must investigate, also by making resort to cutting edge technology and diagnostic means. You must not be invasive, you must avoid stratigraphies or micro samples that may destroy the artwork. This must be done only when it is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, there are non-destructive tests that can be very important for us to understand the work of art better, and to understand its history, not only to help the restoration process. That's interesting. This makes me think of anti-aging techniques. One must prevent, you must not exaggerate with Botox. Women should preserve their wrinkles because they sort of support beauty. We shouldn't rub out the signs of time. Yes, yes, you're right. There are similarities with cosmetics, with aesthetic medicine. Uh, Another important aspect of restoration is, before intervening, we must understand the causes of the damage. So, again, in a similar way, in medicine, we must ask ourselves what are the causes, the etiology of diseases, and we must act upon the causes, not only on the symptoms of the disease. And we often forget about that. The same thing applies to a work of art, which is in a bad state. Uh, the work of art is got sick in a sense, so we must understand the cause. Uh, why did this happen? So if I reiterate, if I repeat the same, and I reinstate the same conditions, if I create the same conditions, after a few years I will have to repeat and restore it again. And of course, this is not advisable. The same thing applies to medicine. You don't want a second surgery or second look surgery. You want to avoid that. So, this is really a very good example, a very good metaphor. It applies a lot. Well, you have a deep knowledge of art, of the history of art. Can you tell us how we should approach a classical work of art or a contemporary work of art? Are there differences? What should we focus on, in your opinion? Well, it is difficult to answer your question. You need to study to understand not only uh, through books, but you also must visit museums, must see the works of art, because a photograph is not the same thing as watching the work of art. As to contemporary art, well, contemporary art is so eclectic, so but one must get familiar with art, and you need to. I mean, you must not be influenced too much by other people's opinion. We must get in touch with ourselves vis-a-vis the work of art you are enjoying at that time. I mean, you must listen to yourself. Of course, sensitivity must be refined, and therefore you have to get familiar with art. This is culture. And then you should not follow passively and obediently art critiques, or, of course, they are important. You must read them and ponder over them, but you also need to be in touch with yourself. Uh, a good work of art is able to communicate with us, to uh, almost always, even when the person is not an expert in the field, in this field. But of course, if a person is able to become more aware and refine one's own sensitivity, that's better. And in Italy, we can do this because we are immersed in art contexts. Each small village in Italy has a historical center. We really live amid art, uh, especially the art of the past. But there are also spaces for contemporary art. Even the art of the past is not able, it's not difficult to enjoy. Just think of the Renaissance art. It can be interpreted in many ways. A painting has different levels of meaning. For example, first an iconographic level, and then an iconological level of meaning. It's difficult somehow to interpret, to read, and understand a mannerism artwork. But again, it's very important to visit museums. You cannot do that once in a lifetime. It must become a routine. You can also go to a museum just to see two or three works of art, to enjoy beauty, or to ponder over the past. You can go there also quite easily. Certainly, but how can you uh, convey your passion for art to young people? Well, passion can be conveyed by one's own passion. I mean, if you get passionate for something in a certain field, of course, you will be able to convey this energy, because young people are very sensitive. They have a big potential in terms of energy, of their energy, and it comes very naturally. So I don't think there's any recipe, any practical piece of advice. I mean, any teacher has a passion will be able to convey this passion, and in a very natural way. Your work is very complex. You carry out restorations both for private clients and for the public institutions. Well, yes, I've been working a lot in the past. Now I teach a lot. So one thing is to carry out restoration, and another thing is teaching about it. Yes, especially in the past, I've been working a lot, both for the private and public uh, institutions, and Certainly, as to the government and the state, of course, especially in Italy, I had problems with the bureaucracy in Italy. And these bureaucratic bottlenecks are really very complex, especially for entrepreneurs. They slow down the process, they slow down our work, they make it very complicated and very, very intricate. And on the other hand, the law which has been passed on safety is very important. And luckily, new legislation has been passed in the last few years, which is very accurate, very precise. Of course, this makes things more complicated, especially when you start a new project. But I mean, bureaucracy is also useful if you can manage it well. Of course, bureaucracy is quite complicated in Italy. It requires lengthy processes. Well, but that happens all over the world. Yes, of course. I'm Italian, so I have a lot of experience with the Italian situation in terms of the Italian bureaucratic situation. You work a lot also to you curate exhibitions, and you also prepare works when they have to be sent on loan for exhibitions. Well, what kind of job is this one? Well, we often accompany the works of art. They must be packed and shipped, and according to very precise indications, and they must be, of course, mm, I mean, that you need to keep a very precise and accurate record about their state of preservation, and then you check once they've been shipped, once they arrive, you have to check them. And this is important, especially for the insurance. It also happens that some damages may be caused by transportation. At that point, you have to repair the damage, but you must be very quick because you have to solve the problem very, very quickly because the exhibition is about to be held. So this can be a very, very fascinating work, but also stressful, yes, especially when you ship abroad a work of art, because at that point you need and you have a chance to have a dialogue with other colleagues, other restoration laboratories. So that's very interesting because you learn from your colleagues. Now, talking about journeys, one of the most important journeys for intellectual artists, man of letter, was the Grand Tour. Can you talk about the Grand Tour to us? Well, the Grand Tour was a cultural phenomenon, and we have almost forgotten this phenomenon, but it was an important phenomenon for 3, 4 centuries. All the intellectuals, painters, musicians, or even aristocrats who wanted to perfect their education were obliged to have a journey, make a journey to Italy, to the south of Italy. Goethe, Stendhal traveled through Italy and, of course, were inspired by Italy. They studied the ruins and the classical architecture, medieval ruins. Now, we are losing sight of this phenomenon, but it is an important phenomenon because it points to the crucial role played by Italy for Europe and for the Western culture in general as a whole, because Italy has been the cradle of a heritage which lays the foundations of the whole Western civilization, not only the Italian civilization. And this is a theme that I have focused on, that I love a lot, and I have imagined a sort of fantasized journey mm, fantasized grand tour, working on these elements, which constitute really the paradigms of our culture. And that gave me a chance to reflect on and ponder over the roots of our culture. In my opinion, this is also a very hot issue now at this time of history. I mean, Europe is being, so to say, invaded by these flows of migrants coming from other cultures, which will certainly change the face of our continent and will inevitably change our own culture, our civilization. And we must bear in mind that this heritage is must be enhanced and must be preserved. We take many things for granted, but they're not to be taken for granted because a civilization may not survive. They follow each other and they die. And if we do not care for this need to hand down this heritage, if we neglect it, this means that we are not aware of its value, of its mere existence. And there's a risk for us, for our civilization, to be overwhelmed and cancelled and swept away. And the same way as the Roman Empire that fell because of so many reasons, but also for cultural reasons, because other cultural elements replaced the previous civilization. The so-called barbarian element got the upper hand and swept away the Roman element. So a historical period was eliminated, was cancelled, deleted, and this inevitably will happen. So this voyage into our own subconscious is very attractive. It's very intriguing for me. It's a bit the theme of nostalgia for beauty, nostalgia for the past. I don't know to what extent we are really truly aware of the value of these themes that are actually very topical indeed. How could you shift from restoration and drawing to painting? I mean, I've seen some of your wonderful paintings, the ones depicting your fantasized grand tour, and you are inspired by your stay here in Northern Europe, and you try to convey and to represent the way in which these intellectuals in the past saw the Italian landscapes. I mean, you try to see the Italian landscapes through their eyes. So we are aware that this was the once in a lifetime voyage, the once in a lifetime journey. Instead, now we travel whenever we want. But you convey at the same time the spleen, the nostalgia for the past, but at the same time the beauty, as you just said, as it must have appeared before the eyes of travelers in the past. How did this idea come to your mind? Well, certainly the experience of history leaves a deep imprint on my soul because I've been living as a restorer, so I was in a deep contact with the works of art. You live in the historical surroundings and contexts of the work of art, palaces, churches. So I probably refined my sensitivity because of my work. And of course, when I have been staying for a period abroad out of Italy, I was, of course, inclined to think of Italy in a nostalgic way. I was looking at Italy through the eyes of a stranger or of a traveler of the Grand Tour through the eyes of a barbarian. Well, yes, in a sense, yes. So there is a connection between all these things, among all these aspects. Anyhow, it's interesting that to see how some ideas were exported out of Italy. I mean, you can understand much more about yourself, about your own country, when you are far from your country. I mean, traveling certainly uh, broadens your horizons because you certainly are able to understand things better. You understand more about yourself, about the problems you encounter every day. Someone said that you are inspired by street life when you walk in the street. Can you tell something about it, or also an episode? Well, yes, that's true. I'm also charmed and fascinated by the landscape, even the urban landscape, because I think that landscape bears the imprint of ourselves, of our history. So during these weeks, I'm so fascinated by landscape. There's also the human presence, of course, but it must fit into the context of the landscape. Yes, the fact that I'm walking around and I let myself be surprised by the auratic aspect, by the aura of the images that I see. And this is a discovery that I've made and that I wanted to show in some of my paintings. How this aura of the images can reawaken our enchantment vis-a-vis the world when we perceive the world. This is something which is very different from beauty because beauty is a generic concept and ultimately beauty is very subjective because true beauty is connected to latitudes, to culture, to fashion, to fads, to taste. Instead, the dimension of enchantment is connected to what is spiritual, to our spiritual uh, inner world. In this sense, the connection between ethics and aesthetics is very close, is very close for me. When you talk about the auratic image and enchantment, you are also talking about astonishment. Yes, this is something I cannot explain by words, but it can be expressed by images. And for example, painting can be a way, or at least I found this way to express my enchantment, this the fact that I perceive the world in this way. I tried to represent it by means of my brushes and colors. For other people, I mean, other people may try other means, but I think that this is a direction that saves us somehow. Dostoevsky said, beauty will save the world. I would add to that a certain approach to the world. Uh, this ability to let oneself be enchanted by the world, to get into this dimension, and this can be helpful, very helpful at a time, this time of history, so depressive, tragic. This is a moment of great depression. In this sense, art can be of great help because now this kind of help is much, much needed. Just read in the newspaper what just happened yesterday. Uh, you hinted at the importance and the value of silence. Now, at this time of history, when everybody's shouting, everybody tries to post all kind of sensational news on the social media. Why is silence important for enchantment? Well, because silence helps to get in touch with oneself. Present problems are linked to estrangement from oneself, alienation, total, utter alienation. For example, the fact that we continuously get in touch with other people because I don't believe in social networks. They are negative, in my opinion, because these are not true contacts. So much so, and this is really true because I can see that depression is spreading so much, and I believe that silence is the wisest way uh, to go. Silence can mean not to show off, to do one's duty silently, because another plague of our modernity is narcissism, which is terrible. From the psychological viewpoint, it is a medical problem. It's a disease. I mean, everybody seems affected by narcissism. I think, to be precise, I shouldn't give you an interview with a view to that, but at a time of disorientation, dépaysement, and narcissism, probably the solution is staying with oneself, one's own self, and looking at the world, becoming able to be enchanted by the world and to be surprised and astonished by the world, which does not happen very often, as far as I can see. You have seen so many works of art, you're so experienced. Is there any work of art that you prefer, that are closer to your heart? Well, works of art? No, not so many. I mean, I cannot mention any of them. If art is art, good art, it must all be, I mean, it must be saved at all costs. Especially the fact that I like everything is due to the fact that being a restorer, I mean, one of the premises and tenets of my work is appreciating everything. And you must like everything. I mean, each and every work of art holds a value, its own value. So I'm not interested in ranking works of art. Of course, there are artists who were rewarded by good reputation, fame. But there are others who remained unknown but who are great all the same. Of course, there are personal preferences. There are periods that I love more. The Renaissance period, maybe. Of course, I was able to touch by hand wonderful works of art. But each and every period has its value, holds its value, and is charming in its own way. So we are back to medicine again. But can you convey a message, take home message to young people who would like to do your job? Well, the message is work hard, be ready to sacrifice yourself, go on if you get passionate about what you're doing. If you don't, change, go and turn to some other career because this is a difficult path and it's tiring, even from the physical viewpoint. So you must be ready to work very hard, to sacrifice yourself, and you shouldn't expect to earn big, quick results. One must be patient and modest. My generation was a bit more modest and more patient, I should say. Anyhow, you've been very successful, even though you are silent, and you've been very rewarded by success. And should you be able to tap more resources, what would you like to undertake? Or what change would you like to make? Well, resources and I mean, financing resources. I mean, new money or a magic wand allowing you to make some three wishes come true. Well, in your work, well, in restoration, for example, what would you like to change or to improve? My wishes cannot be fulfilled probably because objectively there have been some changes in the legislation both for restorers and for fine arts academies that have been transformed and have become universities, but there are still some aspects that are different from the university proper. Some changes are occurring very slowly while the society is changing very rapidly, and this has created problems in our society. So my wish is that we are able to cut some knots, that we can solve some problems, both for the Fine Arts Academy. I mean, they must become universities, and this change must not be misunderstood. I mean, fine art academies are different from universities. They must be preserved in their identity, but they must become, I mean, they must be on an equal footing in terms of financing. But of course, there are experts, and the directors of the fine arts academies are really doing a lot, and I appreciate them a lot. But Italian politics is quite slow. It's not able to keep pace with these changes. So I hope that these changes may occur more rapidly. But I mean, things are quite complex now because it took too much to change. It took a long time to change, so we lag behind. It's late now, probably. What do you think about entrepreneurs who contribute to preserving and works of art in terms of their conservation? Of course, I appreciate them a lot because they're the new patrons of art. Of course, the marketing interest must not prevail. I mean, the cultural intervention and project must not become a self-celebrating ritual, which in the end, neglects the cultural motivations for the restoration or for the exhibition. Sometimes they exaggerate in this respect, but of course I welcome this kind of initiatives. Now, you work a lot in this field, the field of aesthetics in the past and the present in art. So you get closer to the mystery of life, of enchantment, of beauty. What is the important thing in our life, in human life? The most important thing. I believe that the perception of the world, or one's own ability to perceive the world in a certain way, for example, the ability to be caught or enchanted by beauty, by life, I mean, against all odds in our daily life, and despite all the problems of our daily life, can be a crucial aspect, a prominent aspect that may help us to get along and to come to grips with the daily problems. We must work a lot on our attitude towards reality. External reality cannot be changed quite often, but our attitude, our own perspective can be changed. So I think that working on the right standpoint, I mean, trying to look at life from the right standpoint at the world. Of course, these are just words, and this must be put into practice, and this is not easy at all. Well, thank you, thanks, and all the best.